Welcome everyone to our annual Women in FinTech event where we celebrate all of the amazing women that are helping to advance our sector forward. And we do this for a celebration. We put together this amazing power list now in its third year, and it keeps on getting bigger and bigger every year, which is fantastic. This year we have about 370 names, so you can imagine how difficult it was for the team to actually get everything ready for tonight. But that's a good thing, because obviously we want to embrace and have as much diversity as possible in our sector, because Innovate Finance is all about financial inclusion and creating a workforce that is reflective of the diversity of the customers who are meant to serve. So it's fantastic that so many of you are here, and so many tech bros as well. I was joking with a few of the founders earlier today that Innovate Finance has a diversity problem as well, Charlotte. We're 85% female now. So we got to hire some tech bros, or people are going to start asking questions about our diversity policies. So we are aware that we have an issue at the moment. For those who don't know me, my name is Georgia Hanius, and I'm head of global communications and diversity programs at Innovate Finance. I've been there from the very start. So we set up in 2014. There was 4 employees, including the CEO, and 54 founding members. I remember specifically, of the 54, there were only 3 female CEOs and entrepreneurs. WorldRemit's Catherine Vines, Claire Flynn-Levy from Essentia Analytics, and Marta Krupinski from Asimo, 3 companies that are still members today. Fast forward 3 years ago, our workforce at Innovate Finance, we've quadrupled in size. We have 275 members, which is brilliant, but only 26 female CEOs and founders. So we still have a long way to go. I'm Canadian, so I was born very optimistic. I don't know why, it's just that gene. So it has been to my advantage that there's only been 26, because it means that I've got a chance to meet all of the women, and I've grown very fond of them, and I'm very proud of their scaling journeys, and I hope that we've helped them along the way, helping to build their profile in the press. So you've inspired the entire team, and we wish you all the luck as you continue with your scaling journeys. So before we begin, I want to let you know about our great event that's coming up next year. We have the Global Summit. It is the premier FinTech event, March 19th to 20th. We expect about 2,000 delegates. It's usually 85% male, so we're trying to get more women to come to the conference next year. So we have this special promotion for the first 30 people that go online to sign up. You have a heavily discounted ticket of £195. You just have to go onto our website and click on the code with with 2017. It's only available for the first 30 people that sign up, so it's first come, first serve, and it closes by midnight tomorrow. So please take the opportunity to sign up and buy a ticket. So this evening we thought we'd keep it short and sweet. We're going to have a fantastic panel. We picked 2 wonderful CEOs to share their experiences of scaling up their successful startups. And we have also a fabulous woman from the old world of finance, Lloyds banking, Sophie Bialaszewski, who will talk about her journey as well, and how she's been able to successfully climb the corporate ranks of a traditional financial institution. And then we're going to have a great opportunity as well to mingle. Also joining the panel, I can't believe I forgot this, we have obviously the investor. Nothing happens without a bit of money. So we've got Katrina Cruz from Anthemis Group, who will be joining us as well on that panel. So before I think we're ready to start, I'd like to hand the mic now over to our fabulous new CEO, Charlotte Croswell, who will say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia, and well done for putting this list together. And I know yourself and the team at Innovate Finance have been, I can quite assure you, working quite hard over the last few days in getting it done. Thank you especially to Hogan Lovells for hosting us and supporting us, our journey, and obviously to Lloyds Bank as well for your support in supporting the event. Both firms work closely with us and do a tremendous job, not just for women, but also generally around fintech. So what great opportunity for us to sit there and work with them and some great women with these firms. I've actually spent quite a lot of time since I started meeting women. So everyone keeps telling me I have this diversity problem, 26 CEOs out of our list of 275. And I keep finding myself in meetings with only women. So I'm delighted that we've got some men standing at the back. A couple of them have taken your seat, ladies, for those who are wearing heels, but maybe we can change that through the course of the evening. But it's genuinely great to have some men really endorsing this list as well. And the fact we've got standing room only at the back, I think, go to say that we are getting there. We are getting there. So as Georgia says, this is a list of celebration. It's about celebrating how many amazing women have been nominated to be on this list and have been included. And I think we should all be very proud of that as we look to change the world in fintech. We have to remember that fintech has come from an old world finance. Not enough women, I come traditionally from finance, not enough women have been sitting in banking. So as we transition, people look for the excitement of fintech away from banking and finance, it's quite natural we are going to go through this evolution of not having enough women sitting in fintech. I talk frequently around STEM skills as well. We need to call for more STEM skills to be put into schools. So again, if we look at the shortages on the tech side, very few are still pursuing their STEM skills. So this is an issue, and we cannot possibly feed the funnel of women entrepreneurs until we sit there and push that through for our next generation as well. You have a current sort of shortage of 40,000 jobs in STEM skilled workers. So some work to be done, and like I always say, if every one of you can go back, if you have daughters in schools, please go and encourage your schools to sit there, focus on it. Something I do quite regularly and probably quite unpopular, but it is extremely important we spread the word and don't be complacent, because it is that change that's needed. So building on ensuring that we maintain a diverse fintech workforce, we're also conducting some research around immigration. This is something we've been asked to do by government. So there is an opportunity today to sit there, there's iPads around the room. We have sent out a survey, hopefully to everyone in this room, about that, and we would love your views on immigration that we can feed back into government, because it is about finding that diverse workforce, both from females, diverse, across the diversity angle, but also from overseas. And I'm sure we have many people here who weren't born here, and we need to ensure we can keep you. But I think we're pointing in the right direction. Let's continue to shine that spotlight. The list is one of these, and how many people are so excited to be on this. Thank you for the retweets and the LinkedIn shares. Without this, we wouldn't be able to get to where we are. So we'll have to see when we can get to Powerlist 1000, Georgia, maybe not next year, but the year after. So I'm now going to hand over to Sharon Lewis, Head of Finance at Hogan Lovells. Sharon, at my request, brought her fabulous daughter with her tonight as well. So she's going to hopefully be one of these future entrepreneurs. But no pressure there, Madeline. But Sharon, works closely with us, and said just thank you so much for hosting us and the whole Hogan Lovells team being here tonight. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Madeleine. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, the men. It's wonderful to see you here. It's a bit like sort of if everybody was here like this, standing room only, it'd be fantastic all the time. We are absolutely proud to be strategic partners of Innovate Finance. We are absolutely proud to announce the continuation of our strategic partnership of Innovate Finance this evening. We feel very strongly that this is something that we as a firm want to do and want to continue. And I'm actually very proud to be one of these power women in fintech. I am a transactional lawyer. I have lived my whole professional life in the world of finance doing big deals. So the fintech space is not my natural homeland, but what I love about it is that it really has allowed me to look beyond those transactions, which I still love, and just look and see what's happening in our society, our economy, in the world at large, brought upon largely by the telephone, or people don't say phone anymore, do they? I don't know what they say. But anyway, that device, that little box that, I don't know, we speak to strangers on it, and we have photos of our cats, and it's all really cool. Anyway, but we're really pleased to be here. I think this evening it's really about diversity, and being able to celebrate quite freely women this evening. So, well done to those who made this power list, and encouragement to those who didn't, because really it's literally within your reach, and you should make sure that you're on it, and the oldies like me can come off. Diversity is a really important issue for any business. The firm also sponsors an organisation called Women's Forum, and last week I was in Mexico. It's my first trip to Mexico. I was very excited. I wasn't quite so excited when I got there, and I was told I couldn't get out of the hotel with my jewellery on. That was a bit sort of, oh, okay. But it was fascinating to be in Mexico and to be with a lot of women, and to talk about the fintech space, to talk about financial inclusion, and to see actually the impact of what we're doing in London and in Europe and New York, and the way that it's impacting countries where there is still a lot of things to do so that people don't have to walk out in the streets without their jewellery. We take it really seriously at Hogan Lovells. It's really important to us. I don't think it's just, however, about women. I think it really is about having diverse populations, and particularly, actually, I look at you, I look at many across the room, and there are a lot of people, young people here. And I think that is really important in today's society. We are quite hierarchical in Western Europe. People like me, are used to sort of like being, at the top of the management chain, and that's very good. But I think that we're very ill-equipped to understand the change that is going on in society, and I really feel very strongly that seeing so many young people here to help guide us through this fundamental change in society is really important. So I just ask you to engage, bear with. I tell the story about my 14-year-old son who has to switch on the television for me, much to his embarrassment. But there's a bit of reality in that, and so really, you young, do that. I think the really other important piece about what we're doing is financial inclusion. Again, that power of that device, and the combination of that device and what we're doing to bring people who don't have bank accounts to be able to work with each other and just have a life is amazing. And I feel very proud of the work that all of us are doing in that area. So my message for this evening, before turning back to Georgia, is thank you all. We're very proud to be part of this, and I really, really hope that each of you, in whatever you're doing, succeeds, and that we collaborate together and we create something fab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte and Sharon. We're going to kick off now with our panel discussion. I'd like to invite, in order, Wendy Jephson. She is the co-founder and chief behavioral scientist at Sybenetix, Nasdaq, because you acquired by Nasdaq earlier this year. And Catherine Vines, the co-founder of WorldRemit, one of the fastest growing remittance companies in the world. We also have Sophie Bialaszewski, who is the head of innovation at Lloyds Banking. And last but not least, Katrina Cruz from Anthemis Group. Moderating this panel will be a fellow Canadian, a friend of mine, and also a formidable journalist. It's not just because you're a friend. Joy Macknight, who is the deputy editor of the FT Banker. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. And I have to say, I'm thrilled to be a part of the Women in FinTech Powerlist 2017 and chairing this panel of incredibly successful women. Because it takes a lot to get here, and there's so much further to go. According to the 2017 Women in Venture report by Crunchbase, women make up just 8% of partners among the top 100 venture firms. And women hold 15% of the partner roles at accelerators and corporate venture firms, which is a 25% improvement in 18 months. But obviously, we still have a lot to go. And out of the women CEOs in the fintech space, who I talk to quite a bit, almost everyone has at least one story of facing the subtle or not so subtle discrimination, being asked questions that no male CEO would be asked, like whether you can make really tough decisions, finding it more difficult than it should be to raise funds, and being bullied by potential male investors. And I've heard all these stories many times, so it's a common theme. So that's why it's so important to have the Women in FinTech Powerlist, because it celebrates the amazing women in the fintech industry and those that have battled the bias and won out. So I'm so happy to have my panelists here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask a few questions to each panelist, but then we're going to open it up to the floor for questions and contributions as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask Wendy. I'm going to turn to Wendy first. And obviously you're the co-founder, as Georgia said, of one of the biggest success stories. But can you tell us more about your company, Sybenetix, and also how you came to be a part of it?
Sure. So Nasdaq Sybenetix now is a behavioural analytics company, really. We develop software that understands human decision making in financial services, focused on asset managers, looking at how can you then feed back to them to make better decisions. But actually really right now focus on the compliance side. So you look at the same data to look for where people are perhaps doing things that they shouldn't be doing that could damage their reputation, and get in there and intervene and stop that.
Okay. And in terms of the acquisition by Nasdaq, so can you talk a little bit about the scale-up journey? And how it is to be a small startup now part of a huge organization.
Yeah, sure. So I came in. The company had got started probably 2009, and I joined in 2014, bringing the behavioural science in because it takes multiple skill sets. Actually, we're a fantastic team of very different skill sets, and everyone in the room will know you need lots of different people doing things to make it work. So until September we were 15 people. Now we're 3,015 people. That's quite cool. And I kind of feel like it's a bit of a reverse merger, that we've acquired a fantastic company. Because they are actually, we set out, we were about to raise funds. That's where we set out back in February. We'd started off with a development client, which was phenomenal to go on that journey with. Really starting to get traction. We got some amazing investors in who came in more because they were very well chosen friends and family who came in and gave us advice and a little bit of money. And then we wanted to go big. So we were out and got a call very quickly from Nasdaq saying, because we kept beating them as well, which is always pleasing. I hear you're raising. So they called us in. We didn't want to sell. We weren't looking to sell. But actually, I remember somebody saying that great companies don't sell, they get bought. I can say that now, can't I? They called us in. We told them what we did and how we thought about things. I think Mark, who's in the room, got an email at 10 o'clock that night saying, can you come back tomorrow? So we went back the next day and they said, well, we'll invest, but we'd actually quite like to buy you. Don't want to be bought. It's a really nice position to be in, but we kept having meetings with them and we kept walking away going, damn, actually, it's a really good match. So that's how we've got to, and it is a really good match because they understand the market, they understand the technology, they have people, we don't have to find the people and train them up. So we kind of skipped the big scale up piece. And in that sense, I feel quite lucky in a way because that's really, really hard. That's really hard. and we can get on with doing what we set out to do, which is design amazing software that really helps people make decisions the right way.
Excellent. Thanks, Wendy. So, Catherine, international remittances, obviously a booming market. I think the World Bank estimated that there should be about 450 billion will be sent from the West to emerging markets in 2017, which is up 4.8%. Can you tell us how the sector has evolved and what role FinTech has played in the evolution?
Obviously, and we talk here, as you say, international remittance, which is about sending money. People, our customers, send money back home. They've moved, away from home to get a better life and to be able to support their family and sending. And one doesn't realize the importance of remittance. If you think that remittance is actually times the value of remittance is more than 4 times the total overseas aid in the world. So you can see how important it is. And in fact, governments have realized that by the G20 actually have got a special kind of working party to see how they can reduce the cost of remittance, because obviously if you send money, there's a fee, and it's been very expensive traditionally, and they really obviously want to reduce that. Historically, the remittance sector has been old-fashioned. It was, and often we give the analogy of, the travel industry, if you remember, and probably some of the younger members maybe might not remember, but years ago, you used to go to a travel agent to buy your air tickets. And you had to go there, queue and wait, and there. Now you wouldn't even think about doing that. You go online and do it. And it's the same about remittances. The traditional players, there's a couple of big players like Western Union and MoneyGram, which have had a bit of a monopoly of the market, have physical locations. So people have got to go, take time off work, go to the shop and do a transaction. So that takes time and it's actually very expensive. And that's why we saw, back in 2010 when we started, the opportunity to use technology to move away from that and to go online, for people to be able to go to our other website or on our app to send money.
Okay, because obviously it's a bit of a busy space. So as you say, there's the sort of incumbents like Western Union, but there's also a lot of new fintech plays as well, like TransferWise and Asimo and things like that. So how do you differentiate yourself? And obviously there's the ease of use and the cost, but how else?
Well, I think that there's a mixture of things. Obviously, from the incumbents' point of view, we obviously online in more countries than they have, and they have an issue of a legacy system. Moving from one model to another is very difficult. In terms of the other players, I think we sometimes don't cover quite the same market. But I think what has kind of differentiate us, we're obviously digital. We've used on the send side, you are totally cashless, which has obviously helped us. But I think what has made us very different is this, not maybe just the smartphone, but a mobile phone, because we identify very quickly on the send side, as I said, with digital, but on the receive side, we identify very quickly some emerging technology in those emerging economies, like in Africa, and with what they call mobile money, which is not, they use a simple, like, this old Nokia phone we used to use back in the early 2000s. And they have a virtual account associated to the mobile number, which allows them to be financially included, whereas before, they had to deal with everything in cash. And we realized, this system were emerging, and we said, well, if they're, instead of receiving cash and having to go and collect cash, why can't they receive it on their mobile? And certainly that's one area which we're certainly the leader currently in terms of international remittance to mobile money. But it's been also, the fact that we've built a big partnership, called network, that, we really, our compliance system is very strong. We're very invested very heavily. There's a strong compliance culture from the founder, down. And that has really helped us to grow the business and differentiate us.
Well, what about from the other sort of fintech plays that are out there? How would you say you differentiate yourself?
Well, as I said, if I look at TransferWise, for example, they challenge the bank, we challenge Western Union. Some of the other players are very similar, but it is, you mentioned $450 billion market. It is a big market, and so we all, kind of targeting maybe slightly different market and slightly different products.
Okay. What would you say were your main challenges when it came to expanding internationally?
Yeah. Well, regulation, because obviously we are a regulated business, and initially, we are online, so that means we have to do online KYC, know your customer, that's part of the requirement. And you can imagine some jurisdiction, online KYC is kind of as a challenge. So 7 years ago, some country would not allow that. Now that's changing, and in fact, regulators are seeing the benefit, because actually the online KYC is far superior to a face-to-face. I don't have time to tell you stories, but I could tell you quite a lot, which shows that, prove that. And so, for example, in Malaysia, which until now has been very traditional and not accepting online KYC, they've now have a regulatory sandbox, and we are part of it, the only company which remittance company, and they are using us as a testing ground to see how can online KYC works.
Excellent. Well, that's so interesting. So, Kat, Anthemis Group has invested in some of the, sort of the biggest success stories in fintech. What are the venture capitalists looking for when investing in a startup, would you say?
Yeah, a mixture of things. So, I guess from our perspective, we're not a generalist fund. We are very much in the space of financial services. But where we see the change and where the founders saw actually their capital going to, having a systemic impact in this industry is digitally native finance. That cuts across all kinds of different subsectors, you name it, retail banking to data and infrastructure, corporate banking, payments, etc. But also in the intersection with kind of infrastructure, technology and data. For me, I personally see finance as a tool as much as impact is a tool, as much as technology is a tool. So in that intersection, we are trying to find these companies, and we like to think that we're looking for the category-defining companies, simply because the economy and the age that we're in, we're very much more driven by information. And someone mentioned the move away from a hierarchical kind of organizational view of the world to a much more kind of a view and kind of society that celebrates the ecosystem and the networked effect. From a startup team perspective, at a very early stage, you are backing the team, so you've really got to believe in them. The expertise has got to be there. The focus has to be there. The resilience and the passion for sure. But then one investment director that I spoke to, because she knew I was talking about it, is actually she said, I just really value someone that just doesn't bullshit. And she does represent the firm as the investment director, so knowing that everyone is pitching for cash, and she said it in quite a kind of a profound, slightly exhausted way. So in the way that it really did mean something to kind of think that through. But also one thing that has always been from the very start is not that we just think of ourselves as an investor. We do think of ourselves as an intermediary, as a partner with other co-investors in the space and companies. And so actually thinking about diligencing companies on their diversity and inclusion practices is very key. We also believe that diversity doesn't come without thinking about inclusion, and that meaning how you're empowering the people in your company.
Because Anthemis actually really does back a lot of women in fintech, and so, but would you say that women pitch differently than men? And then would you also say, like, how can you really overcome that bias, I guess, from the other side, from the investor side?
Yeah, I would hate to give the generalist answer, which is, yes, women pitch differently to men, because it really does depend on your self-perception. How conscious are you that you're a woman pitching? And also the perception in the room. Do you suddenly automatically, unconsciously think it's a woman pitching? Do we know how people are kind of communicating or judging people on that impression? It's kind of a two-way street that isn't really talked about because it's not an open environment. You're pitching for cash. You want to make a good impression. You don't want to lead with, forget the fact that I'm a woman. You know, it's just, but also at the same time, you don't want to be, you know, see that as a barrier for any reason. I'm sure everyone would agree here. They would hate to think they're put on some kind of pedestal or given special treatment just because we're women. And there are also other points of kind of thinking about the diversity, particularly cognitive diversity, is something that's really interesting to think about. Not just the gender diversity issue.
But as I said before, in sort of that the crunch-based sort of the stats that they brought forward. If you think about most of the time as a woman pitching, you're pitching to a panel of men, right? So there can be a bias, I would say, in terms of trying to access
Absolutely.
that cash.
Yeah, that bias is still there for sure.
Okay, Sophie, coming from the banking background, it's interesting, you know, especially as head of innovation. What are some of the exciting innovations that you're championing at the moment? Can you give us some example?
Yeah, so, you know, we're the UK's largest digital bank, so we're always looking at a whole heap of things. So whether it's, you know, heartbeat authentication, selfie authentication, what we're doing with data and mobile. But to be honest, some of the things that I'm really interested in are around that I think are really exciting are some of the collaborations that we've got at the moment. So only today, Rainmaking Collab, which is an accelerator, rebranded and relaunched today with a new focus. So they moved on from early stage fintech startups to more mature ones. So I'm really excited about some of the prospects that we'll get to see there. And I think the first thing they're going to look at is digital identity. But also working with organisations like Innovate Finance, Nesta and Tech City UK. I think we've moved on as a sector over the last sort of 3.5 years from, you know, that kind of competing conversation to more along the lines of, well, actually, we all need this ecosystem to be successful if we're going to win out. And, you know, part of our role is around helping Britain prosper. And I think more and more the future is going to be an increased number of collaborations. So I think that's a really exciting bit, I think, at the moment in financial services.
So what does Lloyd do really to promote, let's say, female entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this question actually, and I think there's one thing that we do internally. So we have a large number of people in our workforce, and I think actually helping them to experience a more entrepreneurial mindset is really important because it's a large sector of the population. So that's one thing that we do. And the other thing we do, as I mentioned earlier, is around the collaborations as well. So we work very closely with Innovate Finance, the diversity program. But we also run FinTech mentoring programs where nearly 30% of the people that we mentor are women. We have a high proportion of the mentors themselves as women as well, going out and speaking to the organisations. And I think, you know, Charlotte mentioned this earlier, we also mentor a lot of sixth formers as well. So one of the things, I don't know about any of you guys in the audience, but when I was at school, the careers advice wasn't great at all. It was pretty rubbish. And actually, we know that, you know, the jobs that young people are going to have when they go into the workforce, they might not even be invented yet. So actually, how do we open people's minds to the plethora of roles that there might be out there, or how do we skill them so that they have like some core competencies? And so we do a lot with younger people, and that's also why I think this Powerlist is really important, because it showcases that diversity of role. You know, I'm not from a technical background, and before Lloyds Banking Group, I didn't work in financial services, but it's really exciting, right? It's one of the most exciting sectors to be in at the moment. And if we can get that enthusiasm and, I guess, opportunity across to young people, then the sector will continue to grow.
What do you think will be a real game changer when it comes to encouraging more women to be entrepreneurs?
I think, so to be honest, I think it's about flexibility. So for larger organisations, it's about making sure that you have flexible working patterns. So I came back from maternity leave. I decided I wanted to take a year off. And I was very clear that when I came back, I only wanted to work 3 days a week. And I had a great manager, sort of Claire Calmer-Jane, who enabled this to happen. And I've recruited a job share as well. That's allowed me to go back into the workforce at the level that I was at beforehand. You know, there was a report by Digital Mums that said that only 50% of people, I think it's 57, when they go back into the workforce, they have to take a junior role, because that's the only way they could get it to work. what a waste of sort of talent and opportunity. So I think flexibility is one, tackling the unconscious bias is another, and we've got to get more funding to female entrepreneurs as well. I think those are the three things I focus on.
Excellent. Okay.
Can I just add
Yes,
as
of
well?
course.
I would also say role models, because, you know, if I reflect on, you know, the women that I see here today, and the women that we potentially saw in finance 20 years ago, it would look massively different and pretty sparse. Like, probably just need the bathroom just to, you know, hold this event. You know,
Prefer not, but
bad example. But just for those women to have gone through 10, 20, maybe 30 years to get to leadership roles, and, you know, have used every weapon and, you know, ammunition to say, in maybe an ethical way or responsible way, we should be thinking more diversely. From a very threatening way, okay, you know, the likes of the tech culture as well, now we're threatening to actually be more noticed. It's these women that are being a lot more vocal because they can also be, having been empowered by their, you know, senior stature. That, for me, I see also is very, you know, kind of, there's hope that it is changing in, I would say, my short span career.
I certainly would add, you know, the role model I think are very important because, as I said, you know, as I think Georgia mentioned earlier, you know, education and school and doesn't encourage women to go in a lot of sectors where they could be very successful. So if they can see role model and the school encourage, and I think school has got a lot to do, and parents to some extent, to kind of encourage people to do those other subjects in order to go into business.
Yeah, I think I would just add to that, actually. I think it's about a growth mindset. I think everybody in the room has got a growth mindset or they wouldn't be here. And that's what it's about. That's what innovation is all about. And yes, we definitely need skills to skill people up in the STEM skill set. But I used to be a lawyer in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm now I'm a behavioural scientist, I'm a psychologist, and yet I'm in FinTech. And I did get so frustrated that I couldn't get people to do what I wanted to do that I learnt to SQL code on the train home. Not very well. But if you want something enough, you can learn it now. And that's the phenomenal thing about tech. Actually, you can learn it on the train. You can plug your laptop in. And so you can learn the skills if it gets you where you want to go. And seeing finance is phenomenal. And actually, we were at a meeting this afternoon. There's some lovely people, men, in finance that I really want to work with because they're doing some really cool things. But I would never have known that if I hadn't come into finance and had the opportunities that I've had, plus going to New York and Hong Kong and all these different places. I'm going to Singapore in a couple of weeks. I had a day to Paris and Brussels. And my 3 daughters are going, that looks quite good. I quite like the look of that. And talking about role models, my 12-year-old daughter has got a slime making business, cactus slimes. There's 4 of them in it. One's a boy. He doesn't get paid because he's only in it for the glory. But they're using Instagram and they're selling this stuff and they're making videos. And, you know, they haven't done all the subjects at school. They've just done it because it gets them what they want to get to. And I think I was just going to say that's one of the things that I look at, you know, from an innovation culture point of view in a large organisation. How do you help people to continue to be curious? Because this is the key thing. And during our lives, at some point, we kind of, you know, maybe we stopped being curious. You know, my little girl's nearly 2. She's into everything. Everything's new. She's really curious about it. How do we continue to do that through our lives and encourage people to do that? Because, you know, people are going to have to change the skills that they have a lot more frequently than they've ever had to before. So it's... I think and we were talking earlier, actually, life is changing, careers are changing, people. So you want women, you have to create a pull. They have to want to be there because they will go somewhere else if it looks better and more fun and more flexible. So you have to show, actually, how great finance is to be. It is a great place to be.
Okay. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to the floor, because I know there's going to be tons of questions. So my last question to the panel is, what top tip would you give women wishing to start up their own business in the FinTech, like a FinTech company, but then also scale it to be successful? I'm going to start with Sophie.
Okay. Good question. I think the first thing is to to go to events like this, or go on Eventbrite or wherever it is, and just find lots of different events that are around that topic and have a lot of conversations. That would be my first piece of advice. I think the key when you're coming up with a new business idea is to fall in love with a problem and not the thing that you think is going to solve it. So speak to a lot of people, try and speak to your customer base. And then in terms of scaling, when I've spoken to a lot of people, one of their challenges is around the talent that they want to pull into their organisation as they scale. So I think have a rigorous recruitment process that is inclusive, and look for diversity, because that's where you're going to get better decisions and ideas.
Excellent. Kat?
I would definitely agree. For any woman or man out here, to, even if you're not in a leadership position, to consciously always be looking for diversity, whether it's in experience. A lot of us have talked about not being in finance academically or in experience, myself included, whether it's to do with gender, sexuality. We have to create a space so that everyone can feel like they're bringing their entire self and their best self to work. And you're really only doing that if you're bringing, creating a safe space in that. But particularly if you're striving to be, a leader to create systemic change in teams, you have to think and be very collaborative, but also quite contrarian. That's very embedded in the Anthemis culture. We have to think of both those things when we're challenging each other of what will be the business that we invest in that breaks the mold in 10 years' time, not today. So all of these things, bear those in mind.
Excellent. Catherine?
Well, I obviously support all this. I think, if you're starting a business, as I did, 7 years ago, you've got to be very passionate about it, because this is going to take over your life. And so if you don't believe in what you're going to do, then it's going to be difficult. But it's not just you. From a first, I will talk to first on a personal basis. You need to get, if you have a partner, if you have a family, you need to get them on board as well. They've got to believe in what you're doing, because otherwise there will be an issue. You are going to have to ask a lot of sacrifices from those people, so they've got to believe on that. And I think when you run a business, especially at the beginning, I think you need to network. You need to not so much to come to find many people, but that support. It can be very lonely to be, a founder of a small company, and networking, talking to people who are in the same situation. You can then realize actually the mistake you're making or the problem you have. Well, they're all having the same problems, and actually that really help. And from a personal basis, do some sport. Exercise is good. So even if you haven't got time, I go swimming every Sunday. I do 70 lanes, and that helps me to cover exercise, but also if I get really frustrated about something, I swim even faster. So that from the company point of view, as I said, is building the team, because at the end of the day, you can have a couple of two or three co-founders, but if you haven't got the team, you will never scale up the business. So it's about the team, and the team, as you say, has got to be diverse, because that really brings, especially in our sector of fintech or technology innovation, you need to have that diverse team which is really going to bring, the ideas, who are going to collaborate, who are going to be innovative. And unless you have that, it's not going to work. We've seen our business being a global business, and in what we do, we are very diverse, and we've got, so many nationalities in our business, over 35. It's a bit like, the UN comes sometime in the office, but that's so important, because you bring so many different angles, and that will make your business successful and scale up.
Wendy?
So when you found that thing that you love, because that's really important, because it's really hard doing this, you find that, and then there's a thing, strong beliefs weakly held. Really listen to people when they're telling you it's not quite there, because you need to let go and change it and shift and pivot and pivot and pivot. And use this network. I ping people all around the world, and you wouldn't believe the people that answer. I've had a professor fly over and train me in his kitchen he's world-leading professor, and he was so lovely. It's extraordinary what people will do if you ask them to share their expertise. And we're all in the room. We're all on LinkedIn. Ask. we've been there, we've done it, we've tried it, we've failed, we've succeeded, we've had another go, we're still laughing.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to open up the floor to questions, contributions. I'm probably going to take like 3 at a time and then have the panel answer the ones that they're interested in.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you.
And can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, of course. So I'm Julia Streets. I'm the chief executive of my own business for 10 years. Thank you very much. It was very interesting sort of listening to what you had to say. One of the things I observe about financial services is that we've got a bit of an issue at the moment, which is we're looking for talent. And we're constant sort of quest for talent, as Charlotte was saying earlier about where do we find talent. I'm interested in that, and also what you do to listen to the young people. I mean, wow, what an amazing room. Like the young talent that's coming through, as you say, are digitally enabled and are using new techniques and thinking very differently. And how do you get your organisations to listen to the young talent coming through so it becomes a very attractive place to be? Because part of it's about a pool, finding them, and then part of it's about being attractive to join. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to take 3 at a time. There's one at the back there who's sitting down.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christiana Mafferdon. I'm from Contigo, and my question to you is, based on what you've discussed and everything you said so far, how do you feel your actions today is going to change the landscape of women in fintech over the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, and then there's one just right back there as well. Yep. Yep.
Hi, I'm Louise from Cedars. Kat touched on it earlier, but most of our problem we're having at the moment, most of our investors are male. So instead of talking about how women can pitch to male investors, do you have any tips about how we can help educate those men into investing in women so you kind of change the discussion in that sense?
Okay, great. So I'm going to come back to the panel. Wendy, do you want to take any of those 3? One is being attractive, what change is going to happen, and educating male investors.
Gosh, I think educating male investors is probably an Anthemis one, but I mean, it's really hard. It is about the team, isn't it? It's about who do you want to work with, and that's a really tough one. What's the tip on that? I don't know, because when I sit down at the table with people, if you're passionate about what you're doing and you are properly aligned with the right investor, you should just be talking about the problem you're trying to solve and how you're going to work on it. And it actually is quite hard to find the right investor. There are a lot of them out there. So I don't know if there's a generic solution to that. Perhaps if it's really a whole male-female thing, it's because you're not the right match in how you're going about it. I'm not sure if, do you want to add to that?
To the point of educating men around, is it investing into women specifically?
Yes, typically our female-led businesses haven't done as well on the platform because the majority of our investors are male. So whether that's maybe we're making some assumptions and adding up the wrong things, but it just seems like we should be helping not only the women do more from a pitching side of things, but maybe educating the male investors to listen to the female pitchers more. I don't know, maybe I've got that one wrong, but yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think it's to the point around listening, we have to bring them within the same forum. There are some really amazing networks. Angel Academy is an angel investor network, led by women and investing in women. But interestingly enough, a lot of male counterpart members as part of the group. I know a few of them and they're amazing. It's bringing them into the conversation and constantly challenging them. I know it's hard to do in a pitch, particularly if you're the woman and if you're not the colleague of the guy. But I guess we have to stay in tune if there are any kind of signs of behavior of reaction to the gender part, because usually it's much more of a vocal thing, as well as a body language thing, and it's a hard one to do because it's the way you build a relationship with that man to bring up that conversation. What I've done in the past when I've faced the challenge of closed communication is I've lent on my colleagues who I know to particularly have a better relationship with that person, in this scenario, it does tend to be a man who does talk to them. But if I'm able to talk to my colleague about that conversation and say, I don't know how to bring it up with him personally, I'm not the best person to do it, could you? It's just asking, it's actively asking. And I take that tact mainly because I want the most efficient route to the problem and not to necessarily offend or burn any bridges. And I feel to have open communication, which again is safe even for the guy to open up about this stuff, is equally as important as keeping it safe for the female entrepreneur. Yeah.
I'm just going to give the wealth of experience that has dawned on me when dealing with men. I am not a data-driven person. I'm in admiration of your coding skills, but that's not what drives me, despite the fact that this is where I live and finance is my world. But I have worked out, particularly actually in the diversity space, that men generally, it's a huge generalization I appreciate, are very data-driven. And women, when we present to men, forget that. And if there's one bit of learning that you could take out of this evening, which is really important, that is if you have a project and it's important to you and you're presenting as a woman to a man, data is at least 50% of the way of getting you there. So that's my little bit of learning.
Catherine? Yeah, just wanted to add, let's certainly support that. But I think it's also sometimes, putting, asking for feedback. Very important. Ask feedback and use a bit of humor. I think it's very important as well. Mm-hmm.
Actually, one thing I'd add to that, and I think you're absolutely right, and I was talking to somebody who's researching entrepreneurs and the difference between men and women, and they have the same lists of what matters to them. It's just women tend to put things, the outcome and what they want to achieve at the top, and men quite often put money at the top, which is your data point. So actually, perhaps the answer to the question is you educate your male investors to make sure that they ask the questions that they want to get the answers to that make them feel comfortable, because they will be in there in the business proposal, but also recognise that they perhaps they may be focusing on certain parts of the pitch that the men do in a different order. So perhaps that's just it. It's just educating to say, look, all the answers will be there. You just might have to get them in a different order.
Okay, so we had two other questions. One is about how to be attractive. Mm-hmm. I think from a bank's perspective, a lot of banks I talk to talk about trying to gain the talent, but then also, if you think of the perception of the banks and then what actually the banks are doing in terms of innovation, makes a big difference actually.
So we mentioned earlier on about role models, and we were talking earlier about the fact that a few years ago we didn't have a social media site for the stuff that we're doing in innovation and digital, and it took a while, but then we managed to get it. And the reason that I wanted it is so that we could talk about some of the things that we were doing and how exciting it was to work there, so that people that might want to come and work for us could see firsthand what a day is like, but also partners could see it as well, so they might want to work with us. We've also changed the way that we do recruitment as well, and we use things like virtual reality in our test centres and things like that, so people start to see from the early on that actually tech is important to us and we're trying out new ways of doing it. But we also have apprenticeship and graduate programs as well, and we talk to them a lot, and we actually get them involved in the next round of recruitment. We get them to run big innovation challenges on some of the topics that are really important to us as a group, and we make sure that the judges are some of the senior people in our business. And one of the other things that's really difficult to do, especially in a large organisation, which can sometimes be quite hierarchical, is getting people in a room and to say, can you just leave your grade hat at the door, please? We're all going to get you to work on an activity. Or we're going to get you to listen to something and challenge it and ask questions, and that's been really, really beneficial for all people. But a big challenge, I think, in large organisations, and I had it at the Post Office as well, is how do you bridge the gap between the people that have been in your organisation for 2 to 3 years and those that have been there 10 to 15, because both of them have hugely valuable assets, and how you marry the two will probably determine whether or not you're going to be successful in the future. That's my personal view.
Okay, and just the last question which was asked, which was really around sort of what is going to be the biggest change, I think, in this area. And we'll just take this round, and then I think we have to stop, which is a bit of a shame because I think we can go on forever. But obviously we have networking after this and drinks and things like that. So what do you think will be the biggest change coming through?
I just, as you were talking, it just reminded me, I was at Web Summit last week and I heard Sarah Creedle talk. And her talk was, what got you here won't get you there. And for me, that just hit home, like we're in an era of accelerated pace of change. This might be the slowest day that we have for the rest of our lives. Just really, unlearn and reimagine, because I think things are going to be completely different, and continue to be curious.
Yes, it's to adapt to every day and look at every day differently. I think, as you said, we won't know what's in 5 years. It could be very, very different to technology.
But do you see any tech, especially sort of tech trends that you think is really going to, all of a sudden like blow everything else out of the water?
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting, and I'll say that we're actually quite involved in trying to support anyone and everyone in the financial services industry to think about digital culture and the transformative aspects without trying to recruit, but we're actually open to talking to anyone who wants to think about particularly female talent in their institutions. So that was a shameless plug for you guys there. But the one thing I have learned since kind of learning more about the portfolio companies and how diverse actually the experience and the expertise that we have around the table, codifying venture design, software development, angel investing in strategic kind of ecosystem development, and from by and large kind of thinking about the ethnography of a founder is how we think about finance and what the future currency of finance will be in terms of the actual exchange. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's actually data. I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect currently with the tech companies that are coming through in, I'm exchanging my cash investment to invest into your business. And weirdly enough, in the marketplace, whether it's B2C, B2B, or B2B enterprise, the exchange there is not necessarily cash anymore, it's data. Mm-hmm. So where I see data being particularly the currency in 10 years' time is something that I think will massively disrupt how we actually communicate and transact within each other, but also the environment. I think that will be just a huge thing that we'll be focusing in on in the next 10 years.
All right, well, I have to say thank you so much for the questions. Thank you so much for the panelists for their insights. That was great, thank you so much. And I think there are some more breaks and we can continue the conversation. Georgia?
Thank you very much to the panelists. That was a really interesting conversation. I've realized that it takes so much to actually build an incredible startup, and your candidness was very invaluable knowledge. I want to thank Hogan Lovells and Lloyds Banking Group as well for all of your support. None of this could happen without your help and your passion and your commitment to the Women in FinTech Powerlist. I hope all of you will sit around or stand. I think half of you have stood, so maybe the ones that have been sitting can get up and those that have been standing can sit down. And I hope all of you will have a beverage and get an opportunity to network. I also want to remind you once again that we have the fantastic Global Summit taking place next year, 19th and 20th of March. At the prestigious Guildhall, we have 30 tickets to give away. Well, not give away, you have to pay for them. But a highly reduced rate of £195. The first 30 people will receive those tickets. But this offer ends tomorrow. And as I said before, we want to get more women to the Global Summit next year. So please come join us. It's going to be an amazing event. And it's an event not to be missed. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, all of you. Good night.